Redman from the Global Diversity and Inclusion team. We are excited to be part of the 30 events that are taking place today across the globe in Microsoft to celebrate International Women's Day. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the sponsors and the individuals who've really made this possible. Thank you. In Redmond, I want to thank SMSG Women and Women at Microsoft. Thank you. Of the many responsibilities that Sue Bevington, the Corporate Vice President of SMSG HR has, she's also a very strong advocate and supporter of D&I. Hence, when we approached her to be the moderator for this panel, she graciously accepted. So with that, I'm going to ask the panelists to come and take their seats and hand over to Sue.
Thank you, Shinder. Good morning and good afternoon and evening to those that are joining us from around the world. As Shinder highlighted, this is International Women's Day, and I'm thrilled to be with you and really excited to have those of you here for what I think is going to be a fun and hopefully thought-provoking discussion for all of us. Shinder also mentioned we are part of both the global initiative of International Women's Day, but across Microsoft we have events going on around the world in over 30 locations, places like the Philippines, London, Munich, Singapore, South Africa, along with several of the other countries in our Middle East Africa region. And so we are only a small part of the events that are going on around the world. So welcome, and thank you for helping us acknowledge this incredibly important day. You know, one of the things that we know for sure in the industry and the world that we live in, that the pace of change is increasingly fast. If you think about our company in just the last year, and the incredible launches we've had of new products and services, and yes, an incredible new set of devices as well. Devices that a year ago, none of us had ever heard of, let alone all had one to share with our family and friends at home as well. But the impact of that change impacts all of us in many, many ways. I know for me as an HR leader, I spent a lot of time thinking about how do we develop our talent and how do we attract and retain the best talent. And the things that we need to do as an organization and as leaders are also changing in an incredibly fast way. One of the things that all of our businesses are focused on is how do we get the best college and university talent throughout the world. And one of the things I hear all the time from college students who are thinking about Microsoft is questions about social responsibility. What does Microsoft do? Now, fortunately, we have great answers to that question, and it serves as a great attractor to our company. But that is not something that we used to hear questions from applicants, and yet it is something that's very important today. We also know that if we look across the globe, 40% of the global workforce is now women. And we've got to be able to attract the best women and men in each and every country, in each and every organization where we do business. We also know that increasingly, particularly in the consumer world, women make technology decisions at home more than men. And if you look at just about the last year, women spent $55 billion around the globe on technology. And we want them to decide to buy our technology. And to do that, we've got to have marketing campaigns and products that appeal to all people, including the women that are making those decisions around the globe. So it really is smart business for us to ensure that we are engaged and involved in empowering women around the world. So as we think about that, it has far-reaching implications for our organization. And what we know is to be effective leaders, increasingly, we've got to build new skills to really create the next generation of leaders. We've got to be able to collaborate effectively. We've got to be able to inspire and reach a broad set of employees, a diverse set of employees, and we've got to be able to think across global lines, across business lines, across organizational lines, and across teams lines. So as we started to think about that today, we thought it would be really interesting to pose a question about leadership. And what does it mean for the next generation of leadership? We know that what we ask and require and need of leaders today is very different than it was 5 years ago. And it will be different a year from now, 3 years from now, and certainly 5 years from now. And so to really ensure that we are keeping up with the pace of that and building the right kind of leadership capabilities across the organization, we wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking with a diverse set of people in our own organization, people that come from different businesses, have different experiences and different perspective, and get their thoughts on what does it mean to be a great leader in the next generation. So to kick that off, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, and I'll have you start, Vahe.
I'm Vahe. I'm the corporate VP of what we call SMSNP.
Dimitri Johnson-Marletti. I am General Manager for the Xbox Live Marketplace business.
I'm Jenny Leigh-Fleury. I lead accessibility in the customer experience team.
I am John Paez. I am a Global Program Manager in Worldwide EPG.
Tazeen Shadid, the Program Manager for System Center.
I'm Nora Mishiva. I'm a Program Manager for Windows Phone.
Great. Yeah, we'll get Nora's mic working. Or we'll switch mics that actually work.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nora Mishiva. I'm a Program Manager for Windows Phone.
Great. And Nora, I'll start with you since you have a mic in your hand that's working.
I have two now.
If you were thinking about being a senior leader at Microsoft 5 years from now, what is the one skill you would start working on to develop right now?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely many, but the one I think is very, very important and I would start working on right now is quick decision making in order to set a direction for the team. And with that in mind, the ability to be flexible enough to change that decision if the need be. I've seen teams where this works really well, and it does two things, because first, it sets the morale for the team. People know that they can trust their leader to have made a decision and not to be wavery about it. But it also allows ICs like me, individual contributors like me, to think about the best implementation of the solution as opposed to second guessing about whether the decision was actually the right one.
Right. Well, it certainly reinforces, too, this idea of the fast-paced world that we live in. Tazeen, how about you? Same question for you.
I think I'll, as Nora said, there are like many, but I would start with something really basic, which kind of aligns with the first job I had at Microsoft, is to just observe people, learn about people. I spent the first 5 years at Microsoft being a user researcher and just watching people, like what they do, and then their behavior, their motivation, and then help the designers translate those into product ideas. And I think the reason it's very important is when you become a leader, first of all, like you cannot become a leader overnight. Like 5 years from now, I'm just not going to become a senior leader. You need followers to be a leader. You can be a manager overnight, like there's a title change, but leader needs followers. And in order for that, you need people who believe in you. So you have to build the trust. You have to build relationships. And the other thing is that when you become a senior leader, you cannot do all the work yourself. You might be a really good individual contributor, good at your work, but once you become a leader, you have to work with other people and let them do some of the work. And we had Brad Anderson, who's our VP a few years ago, and one of the exec leader speaker series we do for Asian ERG. When he was sharing his tips about how to be successful, the first one he had is surround yourself with like good people. And in order to do that, you just have to learn about people and what motivates people, what are their values, because Sue talked about the diverse workforce. There's going to be people who are not like you from all different backgrounds. So once you know their motivation, their values, what they care about, you can create bonds with them. They'll trust you, and that will help you be a successful leader. Thank you.
Thank you. John, how about you?
I think for me, looking at leadership and what it looks like for the future, one of the things that I think stands out for me that is no longer a one-person job, but rather, more of like a community. And I'm looking at this room right here, and I think this is where leadership starts. We have so many incredible, groups at Microsoft. And so one of the things that I will definitely start doing is making sure that I have, really identify, who those leaders are in those groups and make sure that I build solid relationships. So in 5 years from now, when I have the opportunity to lead, I'll be able to really look at Microsoft, as one company rather than, just small little groups here and there, and be able to really, with, again, as a group, continue to, make our company, what it is today and continue to succeed in the future. So I think leadership is more of like a collective group of people moving forward.
Thank you. So kind of on that same topic, Dimitra, if you think about what are the traits that you see as critical for the next generation of leaders?
Yeah, I think, a coach of mine recently gave me a book that, what got you here won't get you there. And I think we've all heard that. I think that notion at a very high level is something that I think any corporation that wants to be successful into the future has to really lock hold of. And I think the employees have to do the same from a leadership perspective. Microsoft has changed. I've been here going on 12 years, and it has changed immensely, even in the type of leaders that we have. I mean, I think we've all heard of the old school Microsoft leadership, which is very different than what it takes to be successful and get to that level today. And so I think there's probably three things, if I could just kind of boil it down to a set. And I think the first one is kind of leadership with connection. I think no longer, like somebody made the point, you have to have followers. Like we are all a volunteer army. We are not indentured servants to Microsoft, so we have the ability to leave and come and go as we please. And so being a leader that has connection with the team that you have and being able to inspire them, not just order them, you certainly get more out of your team that way, and they're inspired and more passionate to follow you. And then I think given the changing landscape that we have today and the level of competition that we have, particularly we see this on the consumer side of the business, you have to have the ability to deal with ambiguity, because the landscape is changing super quickly. And so being able to just deal with, we don't always have all the right answers, and we deal with a lot of meaty problems. So being able to deal with that ambiguity when the answer isn't clear, and then being flexible enough to just course correct pretty quickly.
So Vahe, you're one of the old school leaders that Dimitra talked about, as well as one of the new school leaders.
Thank you.
Oh,
You know what I mean.
you're old school and new school, and I know that I get to work with leadership issues with you a lot. So how do you think about the traits that are important for the next generation of leaders?
I was in full agreement with what you said. Actually, no, I think maybe I will just reinforce what she said because it's so true. First of all, I don't think I'm old in old school, but I think being authentic is critical, as we go now. I mean, it's the world is completely connected. It's funny that our strategy is based on, connected devices and services, but think about the people who are surrounding ourselves, not only the family, but the competitors, in fact, the partners, the customers, they tweet, they yammer, they IM, they chatter, they email, of course, they phone sometime. But and they Facebook, they LinkedIn, they are completely interconnected. So if you are not who you are really, truly, and you are inspiring people and you walk the talk, at some point someone will discover that you are not the same person we are talking about, and you will start to lose credibility and the confidence and trust from your organization. And I think that in this world, being who you are, there are plenty of management book and leadership book. The worst thing is to start to learn these things by heart and try to apply them while you are not, the person. And so in a very, very ambiguous, stressful, fast-changing world, in fact, being able to inspire people to success, put the bar and raise the bar higher, because in fact, at the moment I'm talking to you, someone maybe somewhere in the world, in an emerging market, in a mature market, is inventing a new business model, a new technology, which is going to be disruptive. And so keeping people on track and inspiring them to succeed, in the future is something which is a critical component of the leadership attribute for tomorrow and today.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Jenny, how about you? What traits have you seen that you think are important for the new generation of leaders?
Yeah, I think I'd probably follow on from what you were saying, Vahe. I'm not going to comment on the old new. I think that's dangerous. But I really do agree. I think there's a need for us to be super focused on who our customers are. And our customers are just by nature of them diverse. They're global. I think globally we're way more connected than we ever were. My family sits in England. Great place. Anyone British? Nope. I've also, my mom's in New Zealand. I'm able to speak in a three-way conversation with them. I'd never been able to do that. It's amazing. I'm also someone who's deaf, and my interpreter's sitting here with me. And I really appreciate that as a leader. And one of the key things I want to keep top of mind is that who I am is what I bring to Microsoft. And how can I turn that into strategy? We've just launched a disability desk, a support desk for customers with disabilities out of customer service and support, which really just takes that appreciation of, there's 1 billion people in the world with disabilities. We've got to support them in a different way, and takes that lens of who our customers are, and brings it into strategy. And I think that's so key to our future. We've got to just keep our eye on the prize, right?
Great. Thank you. You know, one of the things as we think about leadership in organizations, the behaviors that we have collectively certainly define us in good ways and ways that we want to change. So I'm curious, John, as you, with your experience in Microsoft and what you've seen, sort of what are the behaviors that you've seen or experienced that really frustrate you, that you'd like to see us change?
That's a good question. Well, let me start by saying Microsoft, I think it's a really great company, and we're so blessed to have incredible talent. But sometimes, we tend to work in silos, and that's not a new theme. But what frustrates me that because we do that, that tends to slow us down. And I think the new Microsoft, we need to have a bit of a sense of urgency that the world is moving a little bit faster than it did 5 or 10 years ago. And that we all need to just really, think as one Microsoft. And so to me, it's really, seeing that a lot of sometimes product teams, are trying to reinvent a world where everybody's doing the same thing. And if we were all to talk a little bit more often, maybe outside the email and have the face-to-face, just have, a stronger collaboration, that would be, one of the things that I think, will definitely lessen some of the frustrations, because I do see, this is an amazing company, and I don't think there's that many Microsofts out there. So I'd like for us, to actually see how we can cooperate more tighter moving forward.
Sure, thanks. Nora, how about you?
Yeah, actually, I agree completely, and my point is very similar in that we live in a world right now where in technology, especially, it's a world of ecosystems. So it's not enough to have a great, Windows experience or a great phone experience. It has to be a great Office, Xbox, across the board. So cross-group collaboration is really key. And the behavior that has frustrated me in kind of the little time that I've been here, one of the few, is the inefficiency in cross-group collaboration. And while I think we've made great strides and we've become very good at aligning the overall goals and strategies, I think everyone has the best in their heart about what the overall goal should be. Our day-to-day goals and deliverables are such that it makes it very difficult to have that team that sits in a completely different building or part of campus in mind. And I think that if perhaps the reward system was such that it paid attention more to that collaborative aspect and the fact that you spend time to make the other team a success, I think that would make the alignment a lot quicker and a lot stronger.
Great, thank you. And Vahe, how about what you've seen?
Frustration? No.
Never.
No, it doesn't
Old
exist.
school.
That's the old school, exactly. Well, I've been joining in April. It will be 21 years at Microsoft. So, if I joined because I met, amazing people, and that's still very true. I mean, we are surrounded by amazing talents, and who are really giving us so much energy every single day. That being said, sometimes, you faced a few situations that are frustrating, and of course, the role as a leader is to fix this. I remember 2 of them. Probably that one of them is in my current role. One of them is in my previous role. Let's start with my current role. When I moved, to Redmond, it was after almost 18 years of field experience, in Europe, in Asia, at the field level, in multiple organizations, and also at the regional HQ. So I felt I had a good understanding of what's going on in the world. And I arrived with this amazing, great opportunity and blessed by this challenge. But I wanted to double the business. It was a $10 billion business, and I wanted to make a $20 billion business in 3.5 years. And the business was growing 5-6% and was a healthy one. But I wanted, of course, in order to double, you need to move more to a 17, 18, 20% year over year. So I started to meet people, around my organization. And the thing that I've been, affected the most was, and there are not so many of this profile, I want to say, but the people who were saying, there's no way. Here, you have a reputation of changing and scaling and shaking somehow what's going on and the habits. Here, everything is going well. We don't need any change. And by the way, you have a great experience and reputation from the field, but Redmond is very, very different. You are going to learn. And to be fair, I was saying, hey, who I am, I don't know maybe. I've been traveling like crazy, back days and days back to Redmond and back to Europe or Asia, but maybe they are right. So let's learn. But after a few weeks, my guts, my intuition was saying, still, I do believe that we can double that business. And so the resilience and the resistance sometimes of people who don't want to change because it's more comfortable to stay where they are probably among the things that get me the most crazy. And so, of course, as a leader, I have to help them to understand, inspire them to see how more they can do and how more they can learn from this experience. The second one, it has been successful because so far we grew by $8 billion over the last 2.5 years. So I think I was right. And they realized that they learned a lot in the path. The other one experience was when I moved from Asia to Munich. My headquarters for Central Eastern Europe was in Munich for the 32 countries there. And there was people were wondering why the subsidiaries are not trusting the regional HQ. And it was an interesting thing. So I met many people in one-to-one and tried to understand. And then I shared my observation in an all-hands meeting. One of them was gossips. People were gossiping like crazy. And they are telling me, that's the culture here.
That doesn't happen in Redmond.
In the old culture, it was happening. It's over now. But the funny thing is that it's an interesting thing because, I was affected. I hate this type of, let's say, situations where people talk, against the others. And of course, if the RHQ is talking, against the field doesn't trust the RHQ. I mean, it's just a basic thing. You don't need to read a book. So I did that speech, and I said only one thing. I explained my non-negotiables and my negotiables. But among the non-negotiables was the gossips. And I said something which was, of course, extreme, but you are going to get the sense of it. I said, if I hear anyone talking against someone beginning tomorrow morning, I will find a way to fire you. Sorry.
I wasn't gossiping.
No. And believe me, overnight, it stopped.
That's old school.
Now I have a one-to-one.
No, but I think, it's interesting because all three of you highlighted, I think, things that all of us have experienced, right, in different ways, no matter where we are in Microsoft, whether it's in Redmond or outside of Redmond. I also think it's interesting listening to that, and part of it sort of with my employee hat and part of it with my HR hat is in each of your answers, I think there's things that we can all do as individuals to challenge ourselves, sort of what do we do at times to contribute to that, the things that we know need to change, and how do we stop our own behavior in that way. But likewise, I know for me, it also is a lot of challenge for me to think about from an HR system standpoint, whether it be organizational structure, whether it be the performance management system, a lot of other things. How do we truly shift the kind of behavior that we're either intentionally or unintentionally reinforcing that we know is not ideal for our organization? So all really great points, and I know things we've all experienced, even gossip. Because let's face it, sometimes it is kind of fun, not very productive, but fun. So, flipping that the other way around, because there is so much in terms of behaviors that really do drive our business forward and create an incredible work environment for all of us at Microsoft. So, Jenny, from your perspective, what are some of the things that you've seen that are very positive that you'd want us to move forward as we think about the next generation?
Yeah, and allow me to maybe share a little story, because I think it's such a great question. I came to Microsoft 8 years ago now in a small place called London, and I remember I came from T-Mobile, and I came on my first day and sat in the London office and sat in, it was mid-year. I don't know if anybody knows about the mid-year process, but let's just say it was a really interesting couple of days, sitting in one of those big U-shaped rooms with 30 people in the room, all of whom had to speak over one another because that was what you did. Because everyone had something great to say, lots of accents, lots of things that, for me, as not just a new employee, but someone who can't hear, was just absolutely bewildering. And I remember after 2 weeks going to my dear mentor that I keep even today and saying, I don't know what I just did. I need to go back to T-Mobile. Get me out of here. And I was, really freaked out. And it was just a new culture. I mean, we have a culture in this company. Now, the story's good, right? Always a good end to a story. But there was a lot of learning in that. I think the biggest learning for me and what really surprised me was that the biggest thing I had to do was actually be open about who I am. And I encourage everyone to do that now. I didn't tell people that I was deaf. Kind of a dumb move. I didn't really explain to people that, yeah, you can speak, but I can't hear you. Once you explain to people, what you really realize about this company is that we're all humans. We all have great souls. We all intentionally want to help people. We want people to be successful in our peers, our managers, our groups. But often we need some education. We need to open our minds and learn about an environment. And I think that's one of those key things I take with me now is, as anyone comes into work as a leader, I want to learn about you and who you are, not in a creepy way. All right, there's a really fine balance for me. That would be called stalking. But I really mean just I want to know what works for you. Are you? We've got a great focus on introversion in one of the groups I work in right now, because I'm clearly not. Clearly not. But a lot of my colleagues are, and the ways that we work are very different. And you get the best out of people when you really are curious, you're open to that learning. You learn that people are better on a phone call versus a video. One of my team members is blind. I'm deaf. Interesting. But we found that we work really well over text. That's how we work best, is over text message. So I think you've got to be curious. You've got to learn. You've got to encourage. It's a great group in Bing Fun doing a hackathon for autism, taking that passion and taking it into something that's just really meaningful, and encourage those and learn more about them.
Great, thank you. Dimitri, you've worked in multiple organizations across Microsoft. What kind of are some of the behaviors and traits that you've seen in a positive way across the organization?
Yeah, I think the most powerful one is when there are no lines in any direction and people come together. And I mean, like from a level perspective, a tenure perspective, divisional, different teams. Where I sit today in IEB, it's very much an engineering-heavy organization, and we're working on some pretty brain-twisting stuff right now in terms of getting ready for the next holiday, et cetera. And so one of the most recent stories I have is we had what's called a code red. And so that's where you take kind of this tiger team of people and you throw them in this room and you lock them in there, come out when you have an answer to what we're going to do. And so the team was comprised of different levels of people, different tenures of people, and different functions, most importantly. So there was marketing, there was business strategy, there was engineering, several flavors of engineering in the room. And it was one of the best things I have ever been a part of, because there was no boundaries. Like people, the goal was to solve this business problem for Microsoft and put us in the best light for the upcoming holiday season. And so there were people who, levels didn't matter. There was a young man in there who was an engineer, super bright engineer, probably level 62, 63. I wanted to throttle him several times. We wanted to throttle each other, but all for the purpose of coming out with a better solution at the end. And so there was no like, hey, you're marketing, I'm engineering, or you're a GM, I'm not, or what. It just didn't matter. It's like our task was to solve this business problem for Microsoft, and that's been a great experience. And one of the takeaways I tell people, I mentor a lot of people, and one of the things I say is, look, Microsoft hired you. We go to the college campuses, like you said, and we cherry pick the best of the best, and we cherry pick the best of the best from industry to have this great organization of super high driver type A personalities. And so you've already made the team. Your voice matters. When you're sitting in a room, it doesn't matter that I'm in there or Vahe's in there or you're in there. It doesn't matter. Like, your opinion counts. So we're trying to solve problems that don't always have a clear answer. So speak up if you have a solution, because solutions can come from any direction, from any person. So don't be intimidated by that.
Yeah, you raise it. Yeah,
I love that. I just think it's all about, everyone's here for a reason. Bring it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mentioned at the beginning this whole idea of effective collaboration being more and more important as we think about going forward. And I think part of the challenge with that is to define what does collaboration mean, because I think sometimes people have in their head that we all get along or we come to some beautiful consensus every time. And that's really not what it's about. It's about what you said. It's everybody bringing their perspectives, working through it, taking on the pain sometimes of that conflict, and as a result, coming out with a better resolution. It's not always easy. It's often painful. And you do have to be very mindful of, are you engaging the right audiences and the right people as you work through the solutions? And I think that's a great example of how that can work. How about you, Tasim? What are some of the things that you've seen?
I'm gonna probably talk about some different stuff, because I think one of the things that attracted me to Microsoft, and then I'm very proud of, is I see the passion people have about changing the world. And I'm not talking about just great software. For example, our Give campaign. Last year we reached the $1 billion mark from just employee donations. That is huge. As someone who has own nonprofit that I run, I know how it's changing the world, and it just helps out not just in what we do, it just shows what we believe in. And when we say about we want to change the world, we really mean it. Through Microsoft Give campaign, I was able to set up a healthcare program in Bangladesh that serves about 10,000 people every month. And last year, when I wanted to form a nonprofit to go more than healthcare, I had people volunteering, I had people donating money, people all around me just chipped in, and then now we have this awesome program going on that's empowering women over there, and then helping kids with education and all sort of stuff, just because people are passionate about changing the world. So that's probably the most awesome behavior, positive one I've seen at Microsoft. The other one I would say is just people going above and beyond, and not just by a mile, by 1,000 miles. When I first came to Microsoft, I was looking at the review system. Oh, I'm competing with each other in the team. But then you go and then everyone's helping you out. People are going out of their way to help you with your stuff, and that's amazing. And then people go out, do things beyond the team also. The ERGs are a great example. Jenny serves as the chair for the cross-disability ERG. I served as the chair for the Asian ERG, and all these ERGs, these are all volunteers. There are hundreds of volunteers going out of their way. It's not part of their commitment, and they're going and doing these things for the community, for Microsoft, and it's just because they want to go out of their way and help. So I think those are probably the two big positives I've seen in everyone at Microsoft.
That's great, thank you. And I would agree. I think that's one we've all experienced. What were you going to say, Jane?
I was just going to say, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, the ERG is an employee resource group. There are seven of them in the company. I'm checking the number. 7 of them in the company that represent different aspects of diversity. Just huge power of community. Really huge power of community.
Absolutely. And if you have questions about those and you're wondering kind of what they are, feel free to reach out to your HR person, or if you know your global diversity and inclusion team member, you can reach out to any of us and we can point you in the right direction for that also. When we think about the new era of leadership, and certainly as we talked about our own space in the technology world, change is a constant. And change is one of those things that sort of everyone thinks they're great at and everybody else struggles with. And the reality is most of us struggle with it in some way or another. So I'd be curious for each of you, and maybe we'll start with Nora and just work down the panel. What are the 1 or 2 tips that you would give others for how to manage and exceed in a fast-changing environment?
Yep. I think what you mentioned was struggling with it is really important, because I think it's human nature to resist change a little bit, and it's what happens after you struggle with it, right? Everyone internally will struggle with it a little bit. And personally, I've had to deal with change from a very young age, which I think has made me very kind of maybe not adaptable to it, but also maybe a little bit jaded. There are worse things out there in the world. I'm from Bulgaria, and when I was 8, being an 8-year-old knowing only Bulgarian, my father, who's a mathematician, told us one day, hey, guess what? We're moving to Japan. And I spent 3 years in a regular, traditional elementary school in Kyoto in Japan, to the point where, the first year I liked math already, but I loved it because it was the only subject I understood anything in. I would look out the window for half the day and then see the numbers on the board, and it's like, oh, I got it. And that experience really changed me. At the end of the day, I learned Japanese, I made new friends, but it proved to me, and there was power in that experience, because it showed me that was really, really tough. I mean, it's probably one of the toughest things you have to do, And I got through it. It wasn't easy, but I got through it. And when I came to the U.S. and had to kind of deal with life in the U.S., but also learning English in 2000, I looked at it, and my first thought was, wait, there's one alphabet. Okay, I'm good, you know. And so my tip, you know, other than if you have kids, moving them to Japan, really great deal. Really good college applications afterwards. But, you know, put yourself out of your comfort zone. And it'll be scary, of course, but if it's scary, you know you're doing it right, you know you're pushing hard enough, and that'll make you much more adaptable to the point where when changes come, you will be ready to deal with them, because in comparison to other changes you've had to go through, you know you persevered.
Great. Thank you, Nora.
I would say the first thing is just don't be in denial. There will be change. So I think that like accepting change would be the first thing. And there are two types, I would say, like being kind of reactive to change. We're moving to a services world as a company. And that means that our touch point with our customers is going to change. So before it was like, oh, we deliver you something, and then we go off, we work for like 2 years, come back with another thing. Whereas in services, you are like touching your customers like every day, and you're getting all this feedback from all sort of places. And the world has changed. So if you do something bad, people are just going to vote with their wallet. So you have to be accepting changes and always like improving what you are trying to do. So that's, I think, more like reactive, like once you get the feedback and then listen and act on it. But you also have to be proactive sometime. Sometime you have to see the change coming and anticipate that and then see what's going on. It's not like all of a sudden change doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to wake up and people stop using Windows or desktop computing. So it just happens over time, and you have to be able to kind of look at what are the trends and look at what are the changes that's happening in people, in business, in technology, and then make your decisions way ahead of others so you have the competitive advantage. And rebrand yourself. Be okay with it. I think Microsoft, as a company right now, we are going through rebranding process. And that's something like, okay, you look at it and you're being proactive about it. I'll add another example is how our nonprofit kind of rebranded ourselves like last year. We were working on healthcare, trying to work with pregnant women, young children, and providing nutrition for them and a good pregnancy, all those things. And we realized that at the end, in order to empower them, we needed to do more. Just providing healthcare was not enough. So we looked at like, what are the core issues over there? Education was an issue. These kids, they're like now born healthy because of the help we are providing. But then after 5 years, they're not going to the good schools because they're not ready for it. So we started a preschool program for them this December. And then we started after-school program for kids who are already going to school so that they don't drop out. We started vocational training for women so that they get a better job. So all these things helped us. Okay, we're focused on healthcare now. We're focused on like empowerment and education, and healthcare just became one of our pillars. So we kind of rebranded ourselves. So I think you always have to be open to that idea of, hey, let's watch out, anticipate the changes coming in, and rebrand yourself so that you're providing more value.
Thank you.
So with change, you can have two things. You can have success, but you can also have failure. So one of the things that I would tell you is before joining Microsoft, I had the chance to work, do 3 startups. So I, did all the crazy, venture capital funding, yada, yada, hire people. And I went to, when I was a little younger, there was somebody that said, well, if you succeed once, you can succeed a second time. And if you can succeed a second time, then it becomes a habit for life. Well, not quite. One of the things, that I think, for me was when I did the startups, 2 out of the 3 were successful, and 1 failed miserably. And for me, I had never failed in my life. And that was probably, what I would say was a big turning, point for me in life. Because up to, all that time, I've, done pretty much everything that I was asked to do, and I succeeded. And I was like, wow, this is just life is easy. And it was that failure of the startup that, made me realize a lot of things. But one of them was my actions and how my actions, had a big impact on people. And, the fact that people were jobless because of me. So what I would say for change is to, for future leaders is our ability to also anticipate failure and looking at failure not as a negative, but more of a, something that will make you stronger. I can tell you that as a, result of that failure of a startup, I feel like I have alligator skin. Now, I don't want to turn into a belt or a suitcase, but I really feel, everything that I do now, I'm a little bit more, stronger as a person, as a leader, and my interactions. So what I would say, just, with change, we will, experience some success, and let's make sure that we enjoy it, but also anticipate failure, because it's bound to happen. And let's make sure that, when we fail, that, we get back up. And I think that's, probably the thing that I would just tell you is that, don't just lie on the floor and feel sorry for yourself. Figure out a way how to get back up really fast, and just make sure you take the time to learn, the key takeaways, what did I learn from this, and, what could I, moving forward, prevent from happening. But that would be, yeah.
I was just going to say, and in hindsight, did you find that you learned just as much or more from the failure than you did the 2 successes?
Without a doubt, I would say, I can tell you that, the 2 startups, and the success, I don't even remember right now, but I certainly do remember that big, the big failure experience. And I can even write a book because there's just, still, that was the one that stuck in my mind so much. But more importantly is, the lessons learned. And I think that's really what kind of, keeps me alert, and given that, making sure that I have, looking at all angles when I'm looking at situations. So definitely made me a stronger person. So I'm just kind of putting, the change. If you experience failure, it's not the end of the world, but make sure that you get back up and do something with it.
Great. Thank you. Jenny, how about you?
So change never happens at Microsoft. I don't think it's a skill. No, I think it's a skill you need not just in the workplace. It's a skill you need at home as well. I'm a mom. I have a 5-year-old who's learnt the word no. And, I have to, she really has learnt the word no. With everything right now. And I have to remember that in helping her and coaching her and helping her to be the person I know she's going to be, you got to pick your, you got to pick your battles a little bit. And she is going to change, right? It's whether or not I'm with her or not, I think and how I pick which no I'm going to counteract. Because I can't counteract every one. I'm seeing nods, so I'm guessing others have got kids in that similar frame. But this is a question that came up in our mentoring yesterday, and there was a group of us that were talking about, how do you deal with a huge amount of change, whether that's org change or product change or focus change within your group. How do you stay really grounded and focused and prioritized? And we came up with a list of stuff. And by the way, I did not insert that into the mentoring for prep for this. That wasn't it. It was just one of those natural questions that came out. And it came down to a few things. It came down to, one, getting on board. We all try to fight the change. I try to fight the fact that my kid is constantly saying no. Get on board. That's where they are. Be with the change. Control what you can. Don't worry about the stuff that you can't. There's stuff in any change that's just way outside of your control. It could be that it's decisions happening above, it's stuff that you don't get yet that hasn't been shared, there's confidentiality. Don't worry about that. That's energy that could be wasted if you spend time really sucking yourself into that. So focus on what you can control. And then be really, really mindful of what your priorities are, because in any change, things drop. So I believe in the power of 3. So it's, what are your top 3 things that are most important to you in that time of change? Write that down. Get that clear. Share it with your team. Share it with your peers. So anything that you think is going to be hitting the bottom of that list, there's an opportunity to have that discussion the other thing we really talked about was being transparent. I think there's a great need for leaders to have that open door, to make sure that you're available. People know that you're there to speak and you want to talk, and you share as much as you possibly can, because it's not just you walking through it, it's everyone around you. And then the last one I'd say is really stay close to people you love, admire, respect, and who can give you good advice, because you can get cloudy. I'm sure that never happens. Maybe I'm the only one, but you can get cloudy when there's so much going on. And so I think keeping your head really clearly above water in a transparent way is how is really how I feel it's a good progress, good way to go.
So I would say, first of all, be honest with yourself. So for me, I hate change. Hate it. And for a long time, I tried to say, oh, well, that's probably not the right thing to say, particularly at work. You want to be on board and all those things. But it's okay. It's okay to say I hate change. I'm not wired that way. But what is most important is how you deal with that change. And so for me, I think having perspective and empathy, both as the person going through it and the leader trying to lead an organization and a team through change. You have to have empathy that other people hate change just like you do, and they're probably feeling some of the same things that you're feeling. So just understanding that and helping them, stay grounded and maintain perspective. I think perspective is probably the biggest thing that, the sun's going to rise tomorrow, the world's going to continue to turn, and guess what? There's probably bigger, more important issues going on in the greater world that we live in than Microsoft IEB going through a reorg, or whatever team going through a reorg. Like, it doesn't even make the news, right? So it's going to be okay, and we're going to be fine. And so just maintain that perspective that at the end of the day, it's going to be fine, and trust the people around you. And when you get like a little bit unhinged about it, find that person to talk to and just level set and just come back the next day. It'll be fine.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I think Danetra is right. I mean, the human nature is not necessarily, in fact, keen to change because it's not comfortable, and people enjoy what they are doing, and everything else is disruptive. The key point, maybe across my experience, is that in fact you don't want also that someone else is driving your destiny for you. And so that's the kind of balance that you need to see between being comfortable for too long, that one day too long, and the competition or someone else, driving, and disrupting for you. And then, you're in a panic mode. So being ahead of the curve all the time is a healthy way and a healthy tension to some degree to bring more value to the organization that you are leading or the company you are belonging to. I always felt that the thinking about, you mentioned the 3 point, but I always try to articulate the 3 components, which are, in fact, what I do and what my organization does in terms of relevance. What we do to increase our influence and what we do to increase our impact. And somehow, there are always times in your life and business life where one dimension is more important than the other one. But in reality, to be really successful as an organization, you need to be able to answer the questions, to these 3 questions. What I'm doing every day, what my organization is doing, are bringing anything that is helping my organization, my company to move beyond. Am I relevant anymore in the marketplace? Or in fact, I'm starting to be lazy and so on. And the last thing I would say is probably something, there are many books making the relationship between sport and business. You've seen that, you have seen some videos sometimes, and sometimes it's overused. And because it's overused, nobody believes in it. I have to say that one of the key learning I had when I was 18 years, I was quite a good international rower in Europe. And so it was the time where I was competing and racing against the Soviet team, the Eastern German team. And these guys at 18 years old were in a very different shape than I was. I mean, from a size perspective, in any dimension, And I felt I was quite fit. But actually, I was wondering if I was wrong when I was looking at these guys. But I won a lot of races, actually, despite that. And when I went and I had the chance to lead organization, sales, marketing in multiple places in the world, what I realized is that most of the time the ones who win are not the ones who are the richest or in fact the strongest. They are the ones who really believe in their win the longest. And the notion of belief, and us as leaders are inspiring people to show that it's possible. It's possible to go beyond their capability today because they are going to learn through it. And yes, there's a matter of risk associated to it. But in fact, when you think as a leader, as you get through the learning and the years, in fact, you need less and less information and data points to decide. And the speed to market is coming from how much information you need to decide and how much, in fact, you're going to unleash the potential of people to grow and deliver. And why I'm so obsessed about growth, it's because growth helps you to keep going on, and that forces you to think about new ideas. Thinking, for example, today my big mantra is thinking about the assets at Microsoft that we don't use and that we should use, as opposed to ask for new resources. Can we use assets in CSS, in Ops, for example, that we don't use today? How I can influence, in fact, the developers and the BGs to be closer, as you said, to the customer, because the relationship with them is going to change big time. So that's what I will say, in short.
Great. Well, thank you. Lots of amazing change experiences that each of you had. I'd say, for me, one of the kind of measures that I always use when I'm struggling getting through change or thinking about it, and you mentioned sort of relying on other people. I typically rely on my mother to help me keep perspective on this. But the thing that I have found over my life, particularly in my personal life, and I try to remind myself professionally of this, is when I have gone through a change that has scared me to death, I mean like on the floor at home crying the night before it is launched, those have always been the best changes in the end. And so I try to remind myself when I'm going through something that I think is big, and it may or may not in reality be big, or I'm scared to death, that it's going to be worth it. And if it isn't big enough, it might not be worth it. And so really trying to push myself to ensure that, one, I'm keeping it in perspective, and two, I'm taking enough risks regardless of the fear of the change, sort of real or perceived. I'm going to switch gears in a moment, and I want the panel to stay up here, but I have this sort of luxury in my job at Microsoft that I get to connect with people across the globe on a daily basis. And I really get to experience the power of Microsoft people everywhere. And when people ask me why I'm so excited about Microsoft, why I'm so confident when we have successes and frankly when we have failures, it's because I know the people. And that's reinforced for me all of the time. And this morning it's been reinforced for me again. Some of the people on the panel I work with every day, some I have worked with previously, and some I met today for the first time. But once again, it was reinforced for me that the people that we have, the insights, the knowledge, the brilliance of our people is the thing that will make us win, and is incredibly positive, encouraging to me. So I did want to take the opportunity for us to just give a round of applause to our panel. In preparation for today, we also took a look at sort of what is some of the external thinking around the new generation of leadership. And one of the organizations that we use a lot at Microsoft is the Center for Creative Leadership. And if you're interested in the topic, it's a great resource to look at some of their printed materials or webinars, that kind of thing. It's interesting. I think you'll see in some of the things that they would highlight as really important in leadership going forward are the same things that you heard from the panel. Embrace new skill sets. Really challenge yourself to think about whether you are an individual contributor, a manager, or a leader. What are the skill sets that you need, and how are you going to develop those? Some of those are sort of how kind of skill sets. As we think about our organization going forward, we also need to develop new skill sets in services, new skill sets in hardware, new skill sets in devices, in consumer. There's a lot of things that we all have to think about. How does that impact the individual roles that we're in, and how do we think about refreshing and retooling our own skills? We talked a lot today about this idea of increased collaboration, and how do we really take advantage of the incredible skill sets that we have across our system. If we stay within silos, it won't work. If we stay within geographies, it won't work. If we stay within teams, it won't work. And we've all got to increasingly build our skills for how do we increase our own influence and impact across the organization through collaboration. Change the environment. We talked about some of the things we love about our environment. We talked about some of the things that we all would like to change. And I think we all have to be change agents in that regard. Help us change the system, but also how do we change our own internal or individual behaviors to make a better work environment for all of us. And then be open and adaptable to new ideas. Be flexible. One of the best leaders I worked at, it was one of the first business leaders that I worked with when I joined Microsoft, was always trying to do this. And we talked about this idea of it doesn't matter whose idea it is, what level somebody is, how new they are to the organization, it's about the idea. And he really embodied that for me. And he also embodied for me this idea of constantly trying to change and improve his skills. And one of the things that he used to do with me before he'd go into a meeting, he'd say, Sue, I'm going to try to change X. And it might have been, he was a senior leader, it might have been how he gave feedback, how he drew out the team more, because he had a very strong style, and he was trying to change it. So he would ask me literally to, on IM, give him feedback throughout the meeting on, was he able to do it or not? And I've always thought that was a great idea. Find a buddy, have someone give you feedback in the moment. Be very intentional about trying to change how you approach an issue or how you give feedback to people. Because if you aren't intentional about it, it's too easy to fall in sort of back into what is your natural style. So those are a few of the things that I would challenge you to take away from today. Keep these folks in mind, and I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you offline as well if you want to connect with them on anything they said or ideas, and continue to sort of help our organization grow and develop. Before I close out for today, I want to bring us back to where we started, International Women's Day. And I am incredibly proud to share with you today some news of a partnership that Microsoft has embarked on with United Nations, specifically around their women's program. Orlando Ayala, who's one of our senior leaders in the organization, has been very actively involved in this, and he and his team has been forging this relationship. And as part of this partnership, there's a lot of things that we're going to be focused on, and a lot of things that we're going to be doing to work with United Nations around empowering women. It's something that Orlando has a lot of passion about. If you talk to Orlando about it, he will tell you that empowering women is not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. So stay tuned for some of the things that you're going to see out of that work. But one of the cool things that's launching today globally is the One Woman Song. And the One Woman Song really is around drawing attention to the issues and the needs around empowering women globally. And it's a song that was developed and produced here through Microsoft Studios. You'll see it starting today on a lot of our Microsoft properties. You'll also see it on the UN properties. And if you watch through the entire video, you will also see Microsoft prominently displayed at the end of it. So to close today, I'd ask you to just sit tight for a couple minutes because we are going to play for you the song that's launching today around the world, One Woman. Feel free to sing, dance, do whatever you want, but enjoy the song. So if you'd go ahead and play the song.
In Kigali, she wakes up, she looks at chores. In Hanoi, Natal, Ramallah, in Tangier, she takes a breath, lifts up her voice. In Lahore, La Paz, Kampala, though she's half a world away, something in me wants to say, we are one woman. You cry and I hear you. We are
Oh, pretty cool. So
Yeah.
find it online. Share it with all your colleagues. Wish all of your colleagues a wonderful International Women's Day. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to your feedback. Thanks a lot.